you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little black subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that black subscribe button. Really does help our audience grow, really does help our channel grow, really does help and mean more than you could possibly know. So go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet 50 on any game, get 250 in free bets. Thank you again to Betfred. Thank you again to you. Now, here is the video that you came here for. Switch gears and do some more portal stuff. So it's been a few days since we did the wide-ranging deep dive portal on, on everything going on. And quite a bit has happened since then. Since the last time we did kind of one of those deep dives, right? Just did a segment on Hunter Dickinson, his communication with Kentucky, the potential fit there. And obviously beyond that, there's just a lot of other really intriguing names that have entered the portal. Max Abmas from Oral Roberts. We have, who else? Harrison Ingram from Stanford. We have LJ Cryer from Baylor. But there is one name that for the most part, it's been pretty quiet in his recruitment. And that's Caleb Love, the former North Carolina guard. He entered the portal a few weeks ago, and essentially there really hasn't been much news to share, a brief flirtation with Indiana. And I sort of get it, right? Like he's an older player. He's a veteran player. He's been through the recruiting stuff before. He doesn't need to, drop a top 5 and a top 10 to get attention. Like we all just kind of want to know where he wants to go. And I think he just wants to get on with his future and start. And so I bring it up because over the last few days, it does feel like this recruitment is essentially about to boil down to 2 schools and 2 schools only, with a new school emerging as a potential favorite for his services. The first, a school that we've thought all along, the Missouri Tigers. We'll explain why Missouri would make a ton of sense for him in a minute, but here is where it gets interesting. Over the last couple of days, multiple reports from multiple credible reporters say that Michigan, Jawad Howard, I don't think he has a roster left, but if when he's building his 2023-2024 roster, it appears as though Caleb Love is a priority. And it appears as though Michigan might be the biggest threat to Missouri for Caleb Love's services. So let's break it down. Let's start with the Missouri stuff. Just to reiterate, probably about a day or so after Caleb Love entered the portal, I kind of did just a big picture, who would go after him, what would make sense, what wouldn't. And from day one, I felt like Missouri is almost the perfect landing spot for a number of different reasons. One, for people who do not know, Caleb Love is from the state of Missouri, originally from St. Louis. So you go home, you hopefully elevate a good program already. Missouri, I think, has a chance to really break out under Dennis Gates. I think Dennis Gates is one of the bright young coaches in this sport. But you go home, you play for the state school, you elevate the program. I think there's going to be some incredible NIL opportunities there. I mean, imagine if you're the face of a Missouri team that makes a Sweet 16 or an Elite 8, or maybe, I don't want to get too excited, Missouri fans, because I know your history. But I mean, imagine if you're the face of a Missouri team that goes to a Final Four. Like, I was reading an article right before I started doing this about Lamont Butler, the star from San Diego State, who hit that game winner on Saturday, and how, like, within hours, he had 15, a dozen, something like that, local and national brands reach out to his agent about NIL money. So now imagine you're Caleb Love at the University of Missouri, what you could do in Missouri as the star of that team, or at least the face of it. Beyond that, I think, look, stylistically, it makes a ton of sense, right? Dennis Gates wants to get up and down. Dennis Gates kind of wants to do that, three-quarter court pressure. It's a lot on the guards. They had a ton of really good guards this year. Some of them will not be back next year. So stylistically, it makes sense as well. And then finally, I think Dennis Gates is the perfect coach for Caleb Love. Because at the end of the day, Caleb Love, listen, he's an incredible talent, but at times Caleb Love can go, a little Caleb Love, right? The reason he's leaving North Carolina, a little too out of control, a little too inefficient. And I think both sides were just ready to kind of go in another direction. North Carolina was like, look, we got RJ Davis back. We're going to hit a few guys in the portal, but for the most part, we're just going in a different direction than where we are right now. And so with Dennis Gates, I think that is the type of coach that is going to hold Caleb Love accountable. The type of coach that's just going to sit there and say, like if Caleb Love takes 2 bad shots on 2 straight possessions, Dennis Gates is going to do that Dennis Gates stare that he has, do the finger and say, come sit with me here for a while, Caleb, and think about what you did. So Dennis Gates to me is the perfect coach for him. I think it's the perfect spot for him. And it appears as though Missouri is very much in the mix for Caleb Love's services. By the way, if my throat's a little scratchy, forgive me. I was at the Final Four for like 8 days, okay? Team won the national championship, whatever. But as far as Caleb Love is concerned, it is interesting because in the last 24 hours, we now have multiple reports that Michigan is making a real run at him. So this is the news that kind of spurred this video for me. Joe Tipton, who's obviously as good as it gets, he tweeted on Tuesday. He said, Missouri and Michigan are among the schools in the mix for North Carolina transfer Caleb Love per sources. And then Andrew Slater, who, if you don't follow him on Twitter, is just a trip. He took it a step further. He was asked about Caleb Love news, and he said, a friend, protege, colleague said it's Mizzou, excuse me, barring a late, bigger offer from Michigan. Point being, Michigan is ready to drop the bag, potentially, although it is worth noting that Michigan historically, since this NIL stuff is coming to play, they are not, like, Michigan doesn't strike me as the type of school that's just going to go all in on NIL. They take care of their players on campus. Blake Corum, their star running back, has talked about the opportunities that have been afforded him, but I don't think they're just in the business of buying players. But from a strictly basketball perspective, I think this is a fascinating concept because I think it could be both really good and I think it could be really bad as well. If you're looking for a positive, maybe what Caleb Love needs is actually the exact opposite of what I just said with Dennis Gates. Maybe he needs the freedom to operate and the freedom to just make mistakes because he's going to make them. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just trying to give you the glasses half full. And Michigan's kind of the perfect place to do it, right? Hunter Dickinson is in the portal. Kobe Buffkin is going to go pro. Jet Howard is going to go pro as well. And so I just bring it up because there's not a lot on that roster for 2023, 2024. I know they'll be active in the portal. Namari Burnett from Alabama committed. But you talk about a place where Caleb Love could go, and maybe it is just full speed ahead. Maybe he needs that confidence. Maybe it's the opposite of what I just said. Maybe he needs the confidence of missing a shot or two to kind of heat up and get hot. We've seen that even from Caleb Love in the Final Four, in the NCAA tournament 2 years ago, when he obviously, lit up Duke, lit up UCLA, whatever. So there's that element of it. And there's a possibility he could be really good. Ball in his hands, off the ball, on the ball, whatever, making plays. I guess what I would say, though, is this. I would be a little bit concerned about him going to a place where, to be blunt, as I just said, there's not much standing in the way of him playing 35 minutes a night, of him taking 26 shots a night. I was thinking about this as I prepped this segment. Like, if Caleb Love was shooting 22, 23, 25 times a game at North Carolina when there were other really good players around him, Armando Bacot, RJ Davis, Leaky Black, whoever, what is he going to be like in a situation where there isn't as much talent around him, where you can't bench him, where they have no choice but to go to him time and time and time again? And so it'd be interesting, the idea, but I do think for Juwan Howard, listen, Juwan Howard, fair or not, and I think it probably is fair at this one, I think he's kind of on the hot seat going into next year, right? You have the Big Ten title 2 years ago, but it was obviously off of the back of many players left over by John Beilein. Franz Wagner was a John Beilein recruit, Isaiah Livers. And so I don't want to discredit Juwan Howard, who did bring in Hunter Dickinson, who did bring in Chaundi Brown, who did bring in Mike Smith, the point guard to that team. But since then, you have you sneak into the NCAA tournament as an 11 seed in 2022. You do make a Sweet 16. You miss the NCAA tournament this year. Listen, you miss the NCAA tournament next year, you might be packing your bags and going. And so if you're going to go all in, you might as well go all in on a guy that can carry you on any given night if the opportunity presents itself, right? Like you could take one of two approaches if you're Juwan Howard. You could try to build a team that's balanced and 7, 8 deep, whatever. Or you could just say, I'm probably not going to get that much talent in the portal, especially in an NIL world where Michigan, again, does not appear to be a school that's just going to bid, whatever you need, here's the money. And if that's the case, maybe you do go with Caleb Love and say, listen, you're all I got. You need me. I need you. Go get me 24 a night. That's what you think he can do? Go prove it to me. So it's a fascinating concept to think about, and I cannot wait to see how this potentially works out and how it potentially doesn't. Obviously, when Caleb Love commits somewhere, we will have some reaction. If you're asking me to bet, one, I just think Missouri still does make more sense. Two, Slater seemed to indicate that unless Michigan comes with a bag, it's going to be Missouri. And those are, that's insinuation. I'm not saying that's what's happening. But I just bring it up to say, you talk about a very, very interesting spot, a very, very interesting team for Caleb Love to potentially end up at. I don't think it gets very much more interesting than those Michigan Wolverines. Appreciate you guys listening to this video here on the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel, especially with my voice just disappearing. If you can do me a favor, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit that little button down at the bottom of the screen. And also make sure to download new episodes of the Aaron Torres Podcast 3 times a week, wherever you get your podcasts.